Hello, thank you for joining the Muscadine Educational Conference and part of the 2021 Virtual Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. I'm Patrick Connor. I'm a professor with the University of Georgia Horticulture Department, and I'm going to be serving as a moderator for this presentation. Pesticide CEU and CCA credits are available for most presentations offered during the live Southeast Regional Conference. Check the Pesticide CEU guide for a list of approved presentations and the participating states. The Pesticide CEU guide is located in the Events Resources tab under the Media Player. The guide is also available at the Resources Center located on the main menu of the conference platform. Please note, pesticide credits will be available only for 1 registered attendees and 2 only during the live conference. Credits will not be available for on-demand viewing. There's a simple 3-step process to receive your Pesticide CEU and CCA credits. First, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, your last name, and the states for which you're requesting credits. Again, right now, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. You'll need to do this for every presentation you request CEU credits for. The second step is to sign out at the end of the presentation. You'll do that the same way. You'll go to the audience chat box and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you're requesting credits. You'll be reminded to sign out at the end of the presentation. Your third step is to complete the Pesticide CEU registration. You only have to complete this registration 1 time during the conference. This is not required with every presentation. To access the Pesticide CEU registration web link, open the Pesticide CEU guide on the Events Resources tab located under the Media Player. The Pesticide CEU registration web link is located on the front cover of the guide. This presentation is pre-recorded to reduce technical difficulties. We'll be answering your questions live at the end of the presentation, however. You can submit a question at any point during the presentation by typing your question in the questions box and pressing send. Don't forget to thank our 2021 conference sponsors and exhibitors by visiting the virtual trade show and featured products pavilion. Lastly, don't forget to join us each morning for coffee and each evening for networking. Check the conference agenda for details. Okay, for this presentation, I'm also going to be your speaker. What I thought I would do with this presentation, since we had so many COVID restrictions this year, really limited amount of field days we could have, and we were doing a lot of videos anyway, and so I thought I'd go through the vineyard at harvest time, look at the various newer cultivars, and give my thoughts and opinions on them in the video. The cultivars we're going to review in this video are Supreme, Majesty, Pauk, Lane, Hall, Terra, Triumph, and Ruby Crisp. So I'll go ahead and start the video now, and then at the end I'll come on and answer any questions you may have. We're going to be looking at now is 3 very large black Muscadines. We're going to look at Supreme, Majesty, and Pauk. Supreme is probably the #1 fresh market cultivar in Georgia right now. Has a lot of good traits and is used quite a bit. And it's one that you'll commonly see if you buy Muscadines at the store. Supreme is quite large. It's a female vine. She's a nice black berry. One of the things about Supreme is a little unusual for a female Muscadine. It sets quite large crops, and sometimes it can actually overcrop. You can see here you're getting enough berries in around this region that is pulling nutrients out of the leaves, and the canopy is not quite as large and long as it should be to support those berries, and that can give a little bit of a problem with Supreme. Supreme is known as being a bit of a fussy Muscadine in terms of trying to keep it alive. If you have heavy crops where it pulls the nutrients out of the vine and then you have a hard winter, you can get a lot of winter kill on Supreme. The thing that Supreme has going for, as well as its large berry size, is it has a very firm berry. When you push on it, it's quite firm even though it's dead ripe. It's not soft like some Muscadines. On the inside of the flesh too is very firm. Got kind of a plum texture to it. Because of that firmness, The grocers like it because it does feel like it's still fresh. And you can store it for 2-3 weeks and it will keep a lot of that firmness in it. It doesn't get soft like some varieties do. And that also makes it quite useful for commercial picking. One of the downsides of Supreme is it's not uncommon to have these really filled out tight clusters. And because the clusters are tight, you have to grab the berries by kind of the back end and really kind of squeeze and tug to pull them off. And typically you'll get the splitting along the stem when you do that. And so stem tear is quite common. If you've had rain, you can get berry split. And if you pick them at the wrong time and you're getting a lot of that berry split, that doesn't pack well because it leads to juice getting on the berries, making them sticky and mold in the berries. And so you can lose quite a bit in pack out some years just due from the pedicel split. Next variety we're going to look at is Majesty. Majesty is actually a progeny of Supreme by Triumph, released out of the Florida A&M program. Big claim to fame in Majesty is strictly fruit size. If you're looking for a big berry Muscadine to kind of impress people with, Majesty is a great pick. See, the berries can be quite large. Similar to Supreme, but maybe with a little bit more pronounced lenticels on the berry. Here you can see some more berries in here. Again, quite large berry. Biggest problem with Majesty is it just doesn't produce enough berries. This is another female vine. As you can see, it's growing quite well. Has a lot of foliage. But when you go in and you look for the actual fruit in there, there's just not a ton of fruit. And this vine is right next to a self-fertile pollinator, and so it's not due to lack of pollination. Crop set on here is marginal, but I've seen Majesty where it just sets very little crop at all. And I don't think I would want to try and do it much commercially, just due to that lack of crop load. You can see down in here, we're just not getting many berries at all. But those that you do get can, again, be quite large. So the third one we're going to look at is Palk. Palk is a release from the University of Georgia breeding program. It's a Supreme by Terra cross, and it was released to be a self-fertile black Muscadine with very large berry size for a self-fertile. Generally, something like Supreme will be around 15-16 grams per berry. And in the past, the self-fertile types have been 10 or 11 grams. Palk is getting up higher than that. It can be 14-15 grams per berry. And because of that, you can pack it and sell it very similarly to Supreme. And being a progeny of Supreme, it's actually quite similar in appearance to Supreme. And I think you could probably pack them together and they would look like the same variety. Generally good crop load on Palk. And fairly good vine growth. You can see here, it's got a little better vine growth than the Supreme does. Yields have been good on Palk, partly because it is self-fertile. And so you don't have to worry about pollinating issues. One of the things we like about Palk better than Supreme is the pedicels are longer. So you can see here, you got a cluster, but your individual berries are loose and moving around on the cluster. And that helps you pick because you can go in and you can grab kind of behind the berry and pull it. That gives you a drier stem scar. You're not getting that split that you get with a Supreme. And that's primarily due to just being able to jiggle that berry around a little bit as you pick them to get a little come off cleaner. And so your pack out's a little better with Palk. In terms of harvest window, Palk is a mid to late season variety, and it's fairly consistent when it comes off. You don't have as many unripe berries as you do with Supreme. But one downside of that is Supreme will ripen some berries very early, and so you can get some early season picking, whereas Palk tends to be strictly mid to late season, and you don't have those early ripening berries. So if you're going to plant Palk, you need something early. You either need to get some Supreme vines in there and pick the early ripening berries off Supreme, or you need to get something like Lane in there with it so that you have some early season market. So that's the three we looked at. Pork, self-fertile, good sized berries, easy to pick. You have your Majesty, very large berries, but probably not enough yield. And then we have the industry standard Supreme, good quality, firm berries, which hold well in storage. The first cultivar we're going to be looking at today is Lane. Lane was our first release after I took over the breeding program. It was selected to be an early season black self-fertile cultivar. Up until its release, there really weren't very many self-fertile early black cultivars. Generally, if you wanted early and black, you had to go for things like Sugargate, which are female, or Supreme. If you go in and pick the early berries off of Supreme, you can get some early market. Lane is different from those, one, because it is self-fertile and doesn't need a pollinizer, and two, because it is consistently early and much earlier than something like Supreme. We selected it. It's a cross between Supreme and Terra. We generally start picking it in the last week of July in Tifton, Georgia, or in the first week of August. This is August 14, and you can see at this stage nearly all the berries are ripe and pickable. Comparably, something like Supreme is probably about 50% ripe at this point in time. As you look at this vine, one thing you'll notice is it's not a super vigorous vine, and that's probably the biggest drawback on Lane, is it doesn't quite have the vine vigor we would like to see. We'd like to see some more longer tendrils and some more vigorous shoot growth out of it. That makes it a little bit difficult to grow. When you first establish Lane, one of the things you want to do is you want to give it a good amount of fertilizer, and don't let it set many fruit in the second and third year. Let it establish the vine first, and then let it come into production. A lot of these self-fertile varieties, they get kind of carried away in the second year. If you've grown them good and you got them down the wire a good bit, they'll set a lot of clusters that second year, and the vine just isn't ready to take that kind of crop load. And so you're better off removing, maybe not all of them, but remove the majority of those and let the vine fill out in the second year, and then start cropping it in the third year. And then watch it in year 3 and 4. And if you're starting to get a little bit too heavy of a fruit set, and you're getting the chlorotic leaves, come in and thin out these shooting spurs and maybe take every other one out and get about a hand's width distance between the fruiting spurs so that it doesn't set quite the crop load and gets the vine more in balance. Lane is generally a very good eating berry. The Brix is almost always high in Lane, and so that's not a problem. It's a little bit different cultivar than a lot of them. If you pull it off and you bite it in half, you see it's got a very firm flesh in it. It's even firmer than like a plum's flesh. And the skin really sticks to the berry and doesn't squirt out like some of the other berries do. So it's a little bit different eating experience than some of the others. And that firm flesh is coming from the Supreme parent. What I would say to do with Lane is you want it maybe as an early season black cultivar, and then transition into Supreme as your main, or Pork as your main season black cultivars. I would probably plant no more than 1/4 of your black acres to Lane, and maybe a little bit less. The lack of vine vigor does kind of worry me with this cultivar. But it is one of the earliest things out there, and so if you're looking for something to get on the market early and get that black color out early, Lane is your best bet. The cultivar we're looking at here is Hall. Hall was released from the University of Georgia about 5 or 6 years ago. It was a cross between Fry and Terra, and it was released as an early season self-fertile bronze Muscadine for commercial and U-pick operations. Hall was released as a replacement for Terra and Triumph. Terra had the problem in that it tended to have poor flavor some years, and Triumph had a problem with having berries that were a little bit too pink and not looking good for the commercial packers. And so we released Hall to try and replace those.
Hall's done pretty well for us as an early season bronze cultivar. The vine is vigorous, grows pretty well, does not tend to overproduce like some self-fertile cultivars do early on. This has a pretty good crop load on it. This is a 4-year-old vine here. Hall tends to have good crop load without having excessive crop that you have to thin some years. And so we do like that about Hall. Cluster size seems to be moderate in size compared to some of the self-fertiles that set too many. One thing you'll notice about Hall is that nice bright yellow color to it. As it ripens, it tends to move towards yellow, whereas something like Triumph, as it ripens, tends to turn pink. And so Hall has a little bit of a less muddy color for that reason. It looks quite nice in a box. Pedicels are fairly long, meaning you can individually grab and pick berries, and so you have the ability to kind of pick them with a dry stem scar. We usually have very good pack out with Hall, and usually you'll get upwards of 90% with a dry scar. And so that leads to a more marketable berries compared to some of the others which have tearing and splitting in the stem scars. In terms of fruit quality, Hall is usually quite sweet. We'll get 1 or 2 degrees more bricks out of Hall than we do with something like Terra. It's more of a traditional Muscadine in that it has a relatively soft flesh, and the flesh does separate from the skin. So let's compare Hall to Terra, which is right next door to it. This vine is Terra. As you can see, Terra is not quite as yellow as a Hall is. A ripe Hall will be a little bit darker in color than a Terra. But as you get them up next to each other, relatively difficult to tell them apart. You could probably pack them together without too much trouble. Like I said, we like Terra. Terra also picks quite well and is a pretty good vine. Terra is maybe not quite as vigorous in vine growth as a Hall. As you can see, it hasn't quite filled in the trellis yet on this vine. But the big problem with Terra has been if you get rainy weather, it'll tend to have a weak flavor to it. And Terra occasionally will have a kind of an off muddy flavor to it. And we haven't noticed that with Hall. Next vine here is Triumph. Triumph was released, I think, in the late 80s by the University of Georgia program. And Triumph is actually a parent of Terra, and then Terra is a parent of Hall. And so this is kind of the grandparent of Hall here. As you can see, pretty good vigorous vine, sets a good crop. The biggest issue we've had with it is this darker berry color. A ripe Triumph is kind of a pink color, and then as they proceed to get riper, it gets darker and darker in color. And this color, sometimes we've had trouble with it when you get it in clamshells and things like that. It just looks like it's an overripe Muscadine. And so you can see from the 2 berries on the top there are Hall, and the ones below are Triumph. And you can see that the Hall just has a much brighter color than does the Triumph. But overall, Triumph is a pretty good vine. We have several people in the department that like to pick Triumph for their Muscadine because they really do like the flavor of it. And Triumph would be a good home garden, or maybe pick your own variety. So that's Hall. Hall is our early season Muscadine, bronze, self-fertile. It'll be coming off. We're recording this on August 15th, and Hall will be ripe very end of July and beginning of August. So we really should have picked Hall at least a week ago, and you probably could have started harvesting the early berries 2 weeks ago. And then you'd want to transition from Hall into more of a mid-season variety. Here we're looking at Ruby Chris. Ruby Chris was a 2019 release from the University of Georgia. It's a self-fertile Muscadine that was released for home garden and pick your own sales. As you might expect from its name, Ruby Chris is differentiated from a lot of other Muscadines by having a bright red color when it's beginning ripe, and then as it further ripens, it turns into more of a purplish color. So here you're seeing berries that are fully ripe. You can see they got a fairly red color, dark red color. If you leave them hang on the vine a while, they'll darken to more of a purple color, looking more like a standard black. But generally, if you're picking them as soon as they're ripe, they're going to be a nice dark red color. And if you look at them and compare them to something like a Supreme, you can see the Supreme on the top there has the dark color, more black, whereas a Ruby Crisp has more of an attractive red color. You can see from these two about the size of Ruby Crisp as compared to Supreme. Ruby Crisp is not quite as big as the Supreme. With a Supreme, a large Supreme berry will be 16, 17 grams. Ruby Crisp is more often 14, 15 grams. However, Ruby Crisp tends to be more even in size than a Supreme. You can see in this cluster all the berries are very uniform, large size. And that's because it's a self-fertile, and the self-fertile berries tend to have optimum pollination, and nearly every berry will have 3 or 4 seeds in it. Whereas a female like Supreme, you'll have some berries with just 1 seed in them that might be a little bit smaller, and then other berries that get fully pollinated have 3 to 4 seeds in them and are full sized. And so while the Supreme big berries will be bigger than the big berries of a Ruby Crisp, the Ruby Crisp will be more average in size in terms of being large. Vine vigor of Ruby Crisp is pretty good. We have generally good growth on the vines. However, we do have some problems in years 2 and 3 with Ruby Crisp setting too much crop. Ruby Crisp tends to produce a very large cluster size with a large number of berries in there. And what happens is when the vine is small, it's getting more berries than the vine can support. And so what we like to do is to train the vines, have them come out the first year, and if we can, get them down the wire. In the second year, we try not to let them set a crop. And we'll go in and pull all the crop off them, because even if they're just down the wire a little ways, what it tends to want to do is try and set almost a full-size crop on those young vines. If you let them do that, the fruit will pull nutrition out of the vine, and it'll weaken the vine. And once that's happened, it's very difficult to bring that vine back into balance. And we found that it takes 2 to 3 years of removing a large percentage of the crop to get the vine back to health once it's lost too much nutrition to the ripening berry. So year 2, pull off all the berries. Year 3, limit the crop load. And then from that point on, you should have a vine that'll be able to be in balance and set full-size crops. If, however, you do get a vine that's looking like this, all the way down the vine, where you just have a large number of berries, and you're starting to see it pulling the nutrients out of the leaves, what you want to do is come in and start removing some of the fruiting spurs. So you can see here we have a spur here, here, here. You would come in and maybe remove every other one of those fruiting spurs off in the pruning season. Just try and widen it out so you're getting a hand length or so between the fruiting spurs and get it more able to produce the crop load that it can sustain. You feel like you're losing a lot of crop doing that, but honestly, you're still going to have a large number of berries on these vines because they are self-fertile and they set such a large number of berries on the clusters that remain. And so you're more likely to leave more berries than actually taking too many off. So why haven't we released this variety for commercial growers? Primary reason is picking scar, and it's just too variable on what level of clean, dry picking scar you get. Today we're looking at a nice hot sunny day. Hasn't rained for a couple days. And so you pick them, you see a little bit of tear on it, or they're dry, and it's picking pretty good, and this is the afternoon. If you come in and pick in the morning, or you pick after the rain, you can oftentimes get a large degree of tearing, and sometimes berry split. And it was just so variable that we thought it wasn't safe for a commercial grower to have a large acreage of it, because they maybe lose too many to pack out because they couldn't pick them the way they wanted to. There's a unique texture. That's the second half of the name is crisp. The reason for that name is because it has a thin, crisp skin and a relatively firm flesh. As you can see there, the skin is very thin. The flesh is firm like its parent Supreme, and the flesh adheres to the skin. You can't really squeeze it and separate the flesh from the skin. So when you eat it, instead of slipping the pulp out and then throwing away the whole like you do with a lot of muscadines, these tend to be more of an eat-it-all berry because the skin is a neutral flavor. It adheres to the flesh. You'll bite it in half, remove the seeds, and then just eat up everything else. And that makes it a very nice fruit for having inside. You don't have as much waste. I think this will be quite popular for pick your own because it is a distinctive texture to it. It's also got a very nice high bricks to it. We're usually getting a degree or two higher bricks in Ruby Crisp than we do with some of the other muscadines. And so it does have a good flavor. However, if you're a connoisseur and you really like a strong muscadine aroma and flavor, Ruby Crisp does not have that type of flavor. It's more of a mildly sweet muscadine. And in fact, some people that don't really care for the extra aroma of a muscadine tend to prefer a Ruby Crisp because it doesn't have much of that muscadine character. Other people that really like that muscadine flavor may be less impressed with the flavor of Ruby Crisp. So that's Ruby Crisp. I think it does have good potential for the pick your own and home garden. It's an outstandingly flavored muscadine. It's kind of a new eating experience of muscadine, and I think customers are going to really like it.